everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast. My name is Ben Jackson, and we are back as a trio, everyone. Joris is back. Is it ironic that Genk won and Joris is back? We said that Genk lost and Joris wasn't here, and now they won. And I feel a conspiracy theory coming along, Scott. I think someone needs to dive into the data, do an analysis of Joris's appearances when I'm involved, and how many times he's here when Genk have won, and how many times he's here when Genk have lost.
But I was represented by Scott's Cats last week, so all good.
Do you know, I have to say, I should maybe bring the Cats into this a little bit more often, because somebody got in touch with us on social media. It was actually it was a Beveren fan who was enjoying the fact that obviously we gave them a top billing last week, deservedly so, in our discussions, and in the fact that I went and wrote a kind of longer form piece on Beveren's return for the Substack. But yeah, somebody got in touch to say with us, came for Beveren, stayed for the Cat. So there was a Beveren fan who's also a cat lover who enjoyed that little interjection from my eldest cat Sam, who seemed quite pleased that Beveren are back in the top flight.
Yeah, and he might have a tendency to Anderlecht in as well. I have to make a stupid joke here.
I was going to come in and say it's nice to have Herf Coffee back on the podcast. So now we're really diving deep into the bag here. Let me quickly run through the results on the weekend, and then we'll crack on. Although we'll have a bit more chat about the Challenger Pro League again this time out, but sadly not for good reasons, some really bad reasons that most people might know about, some people don't. But yeah, we'll get into that when we get into that. Friday kicked off Standard against Raal. That one, as you could have predicted, this was always going to finish in a draw. At least it had goals. I predicted this might be a 0-0, but it finished 1-1, so that's pretty nice. Mechelen left it incredibly late to score the winner against Waregem to win 2-1. Has that secured their spot in the playoffs, in the top six? It's pretty much there if you look at kind of the points gap that they've got. Fixtures are a little bit iffy, but I feel like they've probably got enough. Antwerp, they beat St. Truiden by 1-0. They really did need that win, and that probably secures their spot outside of the bottom four. Anderlecht on a bit of a roll. They absolutely demolished Leuven 5-1 at home. Genk, as we mentioned, they won. They beat Ghent 3-0 in the battle for the top six. That is a huge swing for the Genkies. Westerlo, down to 10 men, still drew 0-0 with Union Saint-Gilloise. Scott and I spoke a little bit about the concerns of the striker front for Union, and is that game like the kind of big sign? 10 men against the side that near the bottom of the league. Yeah, cause for concern for Union. But we won't speak about that today. We can speak about that if it becomes a problem. Let's not be kind of too reactionary to things that are going on. Charleroi against Club Brugge. This one was pretty eventful. Charleroi going down to 10 men after taking the lead through Keita. Solis scoring a penalty that, was questionable according to Cornelis. Ordonez scoring in the 100th minute of the game. Despite there only being 8 minutes added on. Charleroi were fuming after this one. They weren't angry about the red card to Dunkirkhoff, but they were angry about like everything else. But I wonder if that was legitimate frustration at what was happening in the game, or more of frustration based on the fact that they've just completely fallen off a cliff in the last couple of weeks. And they're actually nearer to the bottom four than they are to the top six in terms of positioning now, which is a little bit not concerning, because I think they've got enough of a gap, and it'd be monumental disgrace and disaster if they did drop into it. Cercle Bruges, they faced Dender under new management as well. Scott and I spoke a little bit about Yannick Ferreira. He was appointed as head coach of Dender. Got a clean sheet in his first game. Unfortunately, they weren't able to score. That one finished 0-0, both keepers making a fair amount of saves. A result that didn't really help either of those two teams down at the bottom of the table, unfortunately. But yeah, Cercle still have a chance. I think, guys, we're kind of looking at Zulte Waregem, or any of the teams in the bottom four will be the bottom four. I think we can probably be quite confident that the rest of those teams just above them are safe for now, and whether anyone's in any real danger remains to be seen anyway, as we keep saying. The race for the top six is very much on. It looks like it's just going to be Ghent or Genk. I don't know if you're in that top six, are you worried probably that Ghent might get their spot in the second playoff and then win the second playoff, and then they'll get their European football, because that's just what they do? I know I make this joke every year, but it's just what they do. But yeah, guys, I'm interested to hear For you, what was your kind of moment of the week or player of the week? One of those two, and then we can kind of get rolling from there. So, Scott, over to you to begin with.
Well, my player of the week comes from a club rather this week, who I haven't spoken about in kind of quite a while, and didn't expect my player of the week to come from. It's Dender's goalkeeper, Gauthier Gallo, who has been decent actually since he came in and became number one. But he was really good this weekend actually. Kind of looking at some of the data as well, he prevented actually. I mean, 8 saves I think in total throughout the game, which is a good number. But across the data, he prevented the equivalent of 2.1 goals. Now, it's a bit spurious, but how this works out is that's based basically on the ratio of goals conceded to the expected number of goals based on the kind of quality of shots, which is obviously the XG factor. So, there's a little bit of room for manoeuvring around this. But yeah, basically 2 goals he prevented on the balance kind of across the data. So he more than played his part in his side getting a draw. But just had a great game, really strong performance, and they kind of needed it. They've got a new manager who's come in, of course, who I'm sure we'll speak about. The Circle Dender game could have gone either way in the end. Circle be disappointed not to have won it, but as I'm sure Joris is going to remind everybody in a minute, Circle's home form has been abysmal this season. I mean, they can barely buy points at home. So on the basis of that, then maybe this is exactly the sort of result that we should have predicted. But yeah, Gallo was great, and it's interesting because the goalkeeping position at Dender wasn't actually a weak one. I don't think they were really. I mean, obviously there was the injury situation, which is why Gallo came in, but it's not been a weak spot for them on the whole. So for it to bring in a change that has been reasonably solid, and for Gallo to have such a strong game is all to the positive. So yeah, somewhat surprisingly for me, it's a Dender player who's my player of the week.
And that in the week that they officially are condemned to the relegation playoffs now as well. But as Scott and I know already, and the listeners not yet, I was thinking in the same direction. But I'm going to widen it a bit more as well. Not necessarily my player of the week yet, but just I think the goalkeeper position in general was in a good position this week. Because indeed, the Cercle goalie also was in good form. Miras for Mechelen also was crucial for their win and for their crucial win, to use that word twice in one sentence. I'll also using that now to segue a bit to that, because and to come back to Ben's question, is that enough for them to secure playoff one, Champions playoffs now for Mechelen for the first time and last time as it stands at least? It is possible. It is possible, mainly on the basis, I think, of other teams probably not going to get enough points anymore to pass them by. We will have to see, of course, how many points they will still get in what. Well, I've seen and read already a lot of times has been said like a 13 games Champions playoffs for them, with the remaining fixtures against 3 likely contenders in those playoffs. Well, at least likely, some of them are already safe as well. So they might potentially need to have at least one more point out of those games. The game against Gent, of course, also will be a crucial one. I segued a little bit away from Gallo in the comments there, but I will turn back because indeed he had a good game, Dender getting a clean sheet, it does happen as well, but not as often. I will also agree the goalkeeper position has not really been the issue. But the manager position also maybe wasn't, and I guess that's indeed the main talking point for them this week. Was it necessary? Also, the weird circumstances with Yannick Ferreira, with them having a ban or not having a ban anymore because of his previous spell in Belgium at Molenbeek. Curious how that goes. And I Was he even on the bench? I think he was. I'm not entirely. I didn't completely follow the sidelines enough, to be fair, about that game. But it looks like he was just taking place. So I guess he wasn't banned, or at least they're convinced that he wasn't anymore. But is it the right manager? And did they actually have to make a change this late in the league? While I mean, they only have 2 games they need to worry about, most likely, which are the play down games, which they can prepare for. Of course, they will try to still escape that, but for that, they probably would have needed a win here. And as you guys mentioned, to touch on Circle, then on the other hand as well, I think I mentioned that last week, when unfortunately without joining the podcast. But yeah, Circle would indeed be fourth in the league on away form. So they're the 4th best away side in the league, which tells you a lot about their home form, which is a bit sad because their most winnable fixtures from the last 4, so that included the one against Dender this weekend, are at home. So that makes it the task a bit more difficult. But yeah, it's too easy for me to now, but I'm still going to do it. But I was the one saying like, well, maybe Circle might escape based on those fixtures. And it still is possible, but I do think they really did miss a chance this weekend. But they might depend a bit more on whether they can still grab that one win that might be enough. It's not necessarily going to be, but they will probably need to get at least 2 games where they get at least some points. But yeah, they still are in it. But they should have won this game, I think, to have a more realistic chance and really. And I agree with what Ben said at the beginning of the episode as well. Zulte Waregem, despite having a good season, they might fall into this relegation playoffs without having to really worry about relegation nonetheless. But I'm sure they will want to avoid that anyway, to avoid these 6 games that at least can add some pressure still. Of course, they can also use any team in the relegation playoffs outside of Dender, most likely can use them a bit as a stress test for next season to see as well who can still be there, and hopefully they don't get into their actual stress test, of course, but they can try out some things, I guess, and see who will be fitting in that squad in the respective squads for next year. But yeah, so this was a lot of tangents, trying to put a lot of information in one thing. But Galon really had a really good game, as did many other goalkeepers. I also forgot to mention Chambare as well, but I might touch on him when I'm a little bit as well when I'm actually going to talk about my player of the week. But I'll leave the mic for now quickly for some comments from your side.
Do you know, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's been a hell of a weekend in a number of ways. I mean, if my moment of the weekend was anything, it was probably Benito Raman's goal, for slightly selfish reasons, which we don't need to explain to regular listeners. I got up out of my seat, I'll tell you that much. Spoiler alert, everybody. It was one of those moments where you felt, I think they might actually do it this time. Fred van der Beest was talking a lot coming into this game against Zulte about how Mechelen had been very close on a number of occasions over the last few years, but just to kind of ran out of steam at exactly this point. You know, when you've got 3 or 4 games left, they've finished poorly, and that's what's really hurt them. And his point was, we cannot do this now. We're in a good position. We need to finish strongly. And this was a game this weekend where they managed to get themselves in front and just kind of couldn't kind of really get much of a foothold in the game, didn't really do anything. And you're watching it thinking, this 1-0 lead is so fragile. You know, they weren't even playing well enough to give you any confidence that they were going to get a second and be able to kill the game. Zulte, much the better side throughout the course of the game, managed to get themselves back into it, and you thought that that's the way it was going to finish. And then almost literally the last kick of the ball, through a series of cataclysmic mistakes from a Zulte perspective, Mechelen managed to get the win, which almost secures it. I mean, I think they're going to not necessarily need another win, but I think they're going to need to at least make sure they they probably don't lose their remaining 3. That's for sure, at the very least, because other sides will probably drop points. But it was Van der Beest's reaction. He looked like somebody who had been just had seen a ghost, kind of couldn't quite believe it. And I don't blame him, because the whole stadium was like that at one point, screaming attack. I did notice as well, which is quite funny. Reminds me of something that Joris said ages ago. I can't remember who Genk were playing a while ago. They were playing somebody in Europe, not playing that well. And I remember Joris's comments while we were watching the game, and he's just going, just shoot, somebody shoot, just attack. And it was a bit like that. The fans were, really, really on edge, and really interesting moment, that, because it goes back to what Ben said ages ago about this is the season where there's an opportunity for the St Trudens and the Mechlins of this world, 2 sides who are not normally in this position, to grab a playoff 1 spot, one of whom has already done it officially now, but then kick on and really try and have a pop at European football in a way that they would never normally get a chance either. So it's been quite an exciting weekend.
Yeah, and maybe the cup is also going to play a factor in that. If those two get in there, like, that's going to mess around the tickets a little bit, could open up more opportunities and stuff like that. So it is the year to do it. And it's ironic it's Rahman, because he's I expected him to play a lot more and score a lot more this season. I mean, he's been injured and that, but even then, since coming back, Van der Beest hasn't really wanted to start him. He's kind of gone back to the role he had at Anderlecht, which is he comes off the bench and is there to make an impact. Hasn't done it as effectively this season as he's done in past seasons, but Rahman comes up with the goods more often than not. I do love him from his time at Fortuna Düsseldorf, obviously, where he used to score quite a few goals as well. Yeah, I think you're right. I think obviously it's Ghent Mechelen this weekend. That's kind of the big one on Sunday. If Mechelen can just avoid defeat, that's it. They've done it, basically. Because Ghent have got Zulte Waregem and Dender to come. Mechelen, I think it's Anderlecht and Club Brugge. So 2 teams looking for points and needing the points going into that kind of playoff mix. I was looking at the kind of home form of the teams as well, just because I was talking, obviously, Cercle being the best, like the 4th best away team. They've got nothing to really worry about in the playoffs if Leuven, Raal and Dender are there, because they're also the 4 worst home teams in the league. So it's like, they'll just win all the away games, so it's fine. Which is it's quite funny. But you always feel, as a fan, you're probably a little bit cheated. You must feel very cheated, actually, if your team is the 4th best away team and the 2nd worst home team. And it's just very interesting psychologically. Why do they play better away from home? Is Sunel just better at getting them set up on the way away from home and stuff like that? I don't know. So definitely something to work out. But Joris, you made an interesting point, and it could make these relegation playoffs not unwatchable, but slightly like a pre-season friendly tournament, in the sense of just teams sticking out some funky lineups, some random players. I mean, Leuven really should use this as a chance to experiment and just kind of strip away at lots of different things, but I don't think they will. Raal, I don't think will. I think they'll just stick with what they're doing. Cercle, they've got so many young players. If they're safe, they're going to just start chucking them in, because I think they need to. They need to work out, right, this is the 2nd down season we've had. Let's see who we can actually rely on at the moment, who's going to step up. I presume Lazinho is going to go, so I wouldn't even bother playing him in the playoffs as soon as you're safe. Just start looking for who's going to replace him. I know that they signed the kid from Dunkirk, didn't they? So maybe we'll see a little bit more from him during the playoffs as well. I was kind of hoping it'd be a little bit more tense in terms of going into the playoffs, but it looks like everything could be kind of wrapped up before we get to the final regular season game this year. But I guess it's kind of the top 6 positioning is going to be interesting, and even in the middle playoffs, it should be quite tight. And I feel like that's been a bit of a dead rubber in recent years. So hopefully that one could be quite entertaining as well. Obviously, Charleroi coming through to win that one last season made it interesting. Ghent are in there. Genk or Ghent should win it if they get in there. Standard, when was the last time they won a playoff game? Like a million years ago. So we're not expecting much from them. Westerlo, Antwerp, Zulte Waregem and Charleroi. Like, I think Zulte Waregem will just enjoy being there. Westerlo will talk ambitiously but not do anything. Charleroi, maybe if they turn things around, I don't know, they could kind of mix it up a little bit, but it could be an interesting playoff 2, depending on how it falls in playoff 1.
Yeah, it's interesting. You alluded to Standard there, Ben, and of course, not only have they not won a playoff game in what feels like forever, and that's no joke, by the way. The other thing that isn't a joke is they can't win consecutive league games. Um, in fact, actually, I can't remember the last time they did it. I should have checked actually before we got together, convened this evening when they actually did it. It's been that long, last season probably. But yeah, just extraordinarily inconsistent. I mean, they set new heights for inconsistency. I think in lots of ways. So that's one big thing to watch out for from a playoff 2 perspective. Not only whether they could win a game, but whether they could even win consecutive games.
Yeah, that'd be nice for them, wouldn't it? Like, I was thinking the other day, like watching them, and I was just like, football obviously goes in cycles. Like, the big teams kind of rise and fall. It's kind of like that history, isn't it? Like empires rise, empires fall, and all that sort of thing. Getting very deep. I don't think Standard Liège were ever an empire. But what is the path to them to get back to being a team that can compete at the top? Because it feels like we've seen this for a number of years now, and it's just like, in my mind, they are just who they are. Like now, who they are is just who they're going to be. Like they're just going to be a team with a really passionate fan base, has a lot of history, has won a lot of stuff, and all that sort of thing. But to get back into that kind of top sides in Belgium, it feels like they just feel so far away. It doesn't feel like the academy is going to be producing enough players for them to get through to that. Financially, is anyone going to come in and really start chucking loads of money in there? Like, I don't think people are massively investing in Belgian football. So yeah, I don't know with Standard. I really want to go watch them. That's like one of my bucket list trips, is to go to Liège and watch them play, because the atmosphere just looks incredible and stuff. And when you see the team get behind them, you can imagine it must be quite special, like a European night or something like that. Like, there's something about nighttime football in Europe on like a Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday now as well that's just super, super special. But it's like, when are Standard Liège going to get back to that position? And are they ever going to get back to that position? It's just, yeah, really, really interesting.
It's
So I
a
don't know what
great
you guys think
question,
about
that.
that.
Just
Yeah.
while we're on Standard, I was just thinking, are the Standard fans ready to hear that, Standard as a side, might never be back at the top of Belgian football, let alone kind of competing for it? That's one just to put out there, you know what I mean? Have they come to terms with that as an idea? Probably not. But, it's an interesting question. The other thing as well is, this kind of underlines that disparity between Walloon and Flemish football as well, and the kind of contrasting standards there. I mean, obviously we've seen kind of RAL really develop at a fast pace. They're a Walloon side, an example of a side that, really, all things considered, are doing very well. Salvatore Caraba this week, their president, saying they absolutely have to stay in the Pro League. It's kind of non-negotiable for them for a whole host of reasons, and I think he's right about that. But you've got to remember as well, Standard have been cutting costs at academy level savagely, absolutely savagely. And this is another thing that I think is going to harm them long term. You're asking the big question, are Standard ever going to become, the great Standard Liège of old? Are they going to be in a position to potentially challenge for the title again at any point and make sizable progress? I don't see how they can do that if they're basically cutting off their nose to spite their face, as some people say, and cutting costs at their academy, which is got to be the mainstay for everybody, surely, of that long-term development. So how do you do that and also have a competitive side on the pitch and not have to rebuild constantly? Well, you do that with a steady stream of talent coming through, and they've essentially said, we're not going to do that anymore. That's pretty much what they've done with some of their decisions. So it's a really tough and a really interesting one. You've probably got some thoughts on that, Joris, haven't you?
There's always a cup. That's what I'm going to say as well. There's always one race to getting to Europe. And I mean, one or two really good transfers could do a lot of things, of course, in crucial positions. The striking position there, the last 2 years, not really hitting the targets on that one. In goal, I'm also still a bit in doubt. Of course, now with Pirag also being the second goalkeeper, that's fine, even though he didn't look good this week, and specifically talking while I was praising goalkeepers, I also have to take them down sometimes, even in a good week for goalkeepers. That one, unfortunately, did not look so good. basically foul getting an assist for his own goal there as well. But that's really. Not only that, of course, they do. The problem is, of course, they really need to reap the rewards if they actually ever do that small, the small good transfers, few good transfers. They need to reap the rewards in that season because we all know they will have to sell afterwards anyway. So these players will most likely only stay one season. Except maybe if they get into Europe, that might, of course, be some convincing elements and also be an extra source of income. Definitely. The only thing I'm going to say, like, Sint-Truiden also was like down at the bottom last year, and now they're fighting for the top. So, like, one good transfer window really can make a big difference. And of course, we can't really say much. And of course, it is more difficult when you have to work with lesser budgets. But I mean, like what I'm hinting at, maybe loan deals, some good loan deals, and that's always risky as well. Of course, not all the loans go. Yeah, they need to be done for the right reasons and thought through as well if they're a good fit. But so far, this season is a bit topsy turvy for sure. Of course, like you touched on. No back-to-back wins, then 2 wins against Genk all of a sudden, especially last week was actually an impressive performance of them. Of course, not going to repeat everything that's been said on that, but a really good performance from them anyway there. And yeah, I mean, the manager, of course, also plays a role, so that's definitely really something that's really something they should think about. Although Evraar actually has been doing quite well, but I guess because I think the main issue still is a bit of the squad, even though on names they have not the worst squad, to be honest. The problem is the names part. So on paper it doesn't always work out. Plus, unfortunately, not many of them, like now, they also have a bit of an injury plague or had. So like with some of those names as well. So not many games they have been able to play with their on paper the strongest starting 11. That also could help them, of course. But I wouldn't take too much long-term conclusions. Of course, the problem is they need to get that extra income stream one way or another way. And European football would be a really good one to also attract more players easier. So more easily. So yeah, that will be the challenge they've been facing for the past couple of seasons. But it's going to be tough. But I'm not saying it's impossible for them to get maybe already lost next season, maybe this season still. Who knows? Through either Champions playoffs, which they still have a small chance, or although for that they will have to win more than one back-to-back game, unfortunately. But who knows? That will happen now. That's the last time they did that was actually in January 2025, so more than a year ago. But that will depend. Their fate will depend on that. But maybe also true, like as Ben mentioned, like the Europe playoffs. I don't think there will be a fun affair, even if some big teams will go in there. That's just the fate of that. But indeed, it is quite close. Last season, it also was quite close at the start, I believe. The problem, of course, then always is that like one or two sides run away, and then after their game that usually comes in the middle of those playoffs, after that game is won by one of the sides, it's more or less decided. I'm supposing this might still be the scenario for this time as well, but who knows? Because more than ever, if all clubs are a bit in that need that extra income through Europe because of the TV money, of course. So all the bigger sides that will tumble in, how many there will be in which form, that we'll have to see, of course. But we'll have that added pressure. So maybe this will actually be a. Well, I'll be wrong, and maybe it will be a fun affair at the top of the Europe playoffs, and then consequently the playoff game that they will have to face against fourth or fifth. I would assume fifth for the moment, because both sides might get a ticket that are in there anyway. But we will have to see. Since we're rambling on a lot, and I've been rambling on a lot, I guess I'll also quickly jump to my player of the week. I also have a moment of the week later on from a completely different story, because I do think there's something that we have brushed over a little bit, but needs to be talked about a bit more. But I'll go for my player of the week, which is, apart from Ballon, it would be pitfalls from Westerlo, or pitfalls. I still don't know. We nobody still knows, and nobody cares anymore. But that their midfielder, we had a few really good actions throughout the game, and just in general a good performance, but also a few really good passes, and one that could have been an assist for Sayat Manesh stood out for me as well, like a cheeky little ball after turning between two Union defenders already, and just in general he was good. The whole of Westerlo was good actually, and they will have felt that they could have taken Union here, of course. Also might touch on it as well. Also impressive, they put Union 10 times offside in this game, so the offside trap was working really well. That must be, I think, the record of this season, at least for the Belgian league, and maybe from long times extra time as well. Of course, it was a few times really tight, and there were also 2 offside goals, one a bit tighter than the other as well from Union. So it is a risky game. They could have lost it because of this, but this time it did work out well, for sure. And Chambare had a really good game, of course. On that's especially that save on Sayat Manesh in the second half. There was also a really good save on a shot from, I forgot who had done it. I think anyway, Alcocer. I think there was a really good save from him as well. That he touched onto the bar even, I think. But yeah, just. I wanted to give a shout out to PS4, because he has, I think it might be the second time I've picked him even. So that's if we actually ever, unfortunately, we haven't really done what I've hoped we would do, but I'm culprit myself, of course, of that as well, to really keep the list of players of the week from all of us. But he might feature on one of the, higher up in the list because of me now. Then I guess, but he's not consistent enough yet. But in some games he's really stood out, like in this one. So against the Union side, of course, like obviously they're a bit searching for the new way up front, of course. But on the defensive front, they're still really strong. So nothing really changed there, and he did well against them. So I think that's why I'm giving him my award of player of the week then.
Congrats to Piedfort. He must join Rafiki Saeed at the top of the list, because I'm sure I've given it to more than once, and if I haven't been here mentally, I've given it to him as well. So he's probably on about 20.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, if I'm not on the podcast, just presume I've probably given it to him. And you're talking about standard selling players, and I was like, who could they sell? I was like, no, they can't sell Rafiki Saeed. I'll have to quit the podcast if that happens. I mean, I probably threatened to quit the podcast when Herf Coffee got sold, but I'm still here. But Saeed, it might just be the final nail in my coffin.
Who's gonna pay us then?
So I'll sell to a big American corporation. That's what everyone's doing at the moment. They can pay you all. No, you made such a good point there, Joris, about Union's defence being so strong. It's kind of, it gives Hubert the chance to kind of experiment in these next couple of games with players up front and different ways of trying to score goals. If he's going to do that, I don't know. I've already seen a couple of the Belgian papers starting to question him, and I was like, I was going to jump on that at some point, because I've had my suspicion, but I was like, even for me, that's a little bit too early. Like, give the man a little bit of time. Let's just see what he does. We've obviously talked about the staff there and how good they are, so I presume they'll be working on something to get through it. One man,
it might be. Sorry. Might be worth mentioning though that it's of course also their 7th, I believe. It's at least from this November 1st that ago that they won an away game, Union. But the thing stays, of course. Also the caveat there. Usually it's a draw, and they win most games at home still. So, and with that average, generally you'll be fine to at least fight for the title and maybe even win it. That's something that they haven't lost a game in more than a year at home now. I think, somewhere in February last year that must have happened against Mechelen, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, even. But I could be wrong there. But anyway, they have I think they only got one draw at home this season, and for the rest, they won all of the rest. So as long as that keeps on happening, the whole Hubert discussion, I guess, is a bit premature indeed.
Doesn't matter. Yeah, he keeps winning at home.
The results are there, good enough at least. The level of play is some other discussion point, but as long as these results are there, I guess they're not really going to really pressure him internally.
But as well, and I can't believe I'm kind of jumping as defensive, but as well, and I think you'd agree with this anyway, Joris. I'm not saying you're making this point, but the performances weren't that great at the beginning of the season on the Pocagnoli anyway. So it's kind of like, it's just a continuation of they get the job done. And at some point, you just don't care if you're winning trophies and winning things. It's just like, doesn't matter. But it'll be really interesting to see how it goes in the playoffs. That home form will be crucial. Like, that if you can win all your home games in the playoffs and pick up those draws away from home, you're going to win the title. But interesting, it's Mechelen that beat them at home, and they could be in the playoffs. Maybe they are the bogey team. Maybe that's the team club fans will be cheering on relentlessly when they face each other in the playoffs.
I think the double header, obviously, between Union and Club is going to be really, really important in all of this as well, as it has been in recent years. I think it could come down to that. Joris's point actually about the home form being really strong and the away form arguably being good enough to keep you right in the mix is an important one. Actually, there's been such a fixation on they've lost their top scorer. There's nobody else kind of close. Does this swing it in Club's favour? As I was asking last week, we don't know the answer to that yet. But either way, I think that those head-to-head encounters in the playoffs, I think, will ultimately be probably what decides it. Aside from the unknown factor of we could yet have two sides who are not normally in this position competing in those games, and we don't know the variables there yet either. How are potentially Mechelen and certainly Sint-Truiden going to respond to playing that playoff one football, and how many points potentially could they take off some of the other big boys that have a say in where that beautiful trophy lands come the end of the season.
Yep, I think they definitely will. I think I can finally get to my player of the week now as well. I've been bouncing around a little bit, but I'll stick him in here now, and he could have a say as well in where the league goes, the way he's playing at the moment. It's Thorgan Hazard, and I was looking back over and I was like, he's actually been, this is his third season with Anderlecht now. I was like, he's been here for 3 years and he's not really done anything. But he's now, after this last weekend and the last 2 weekends, basically, he's kind of almost on course for his best season since he played for Zulte Waregem. All those many, many years ago when he scored, I think it was something like 17 goals, 17 assists, 53 games. That was obviously when they played in the Europa League as well. Like Zulte Waregem's heyday with Thorgan in the side. And against Leuven this weekend, last weekend he got a hat-trick against Zulte Waregem, which was weird. Like, I think that was the first time he'd played there since he left, which just completely, I kind of glazed over. I was like, that's got to be true because they haven't been in the league for 2 years since he came back. They played each other in the cup. He didn't celebrate. He got a great ovation as well from the Zulte Waregem fans. He's obviously really loved there from that time that they had and that team they had. And Frankie Jury was in the crowd as well. So it was kind of it was quite interesting. Although he looked pretty pissed off with the result last weekend, to be fair to him. But then he followed that hat-trick up with 2 goals and an assist against Leuven. 5-1 victory. They're starting to score some goals over there, and he's picked up the mantle really, really well. Angolo obviously leaving left a gap, and he's kind of stepped into that. And this is what they signed him for. He's there to he's not just there to kind of retire. He's there to actually contribute and do stuff, and he is doing stuff, and he's showing his quality. And it's really, really good to see. This is a better season than he had at any point, I think, with Borussia Dortmund. The most goals he scored. I don't think he scored more than 10 goals for Borussia Dortmund during his time there. He did get some assists as well. So I think going into the playoffs with a Hazard in form and firing is really, really good. And it looks like him and his brothers are having meals out to celebrate and all that sort of stuff and having a lot of fun. But it's nice to see at least one of them is competing still at the top level. So that was my player of the week, Thorgan Hazard. Not a great week for Prevo in goal for Leuven. Super frustrating after they ran Club Brugge quite close the week before, and then they get absolutely battered the week after putting together a semi-decent run of like wins and results and stuff. So yeah, congratulations to Thorgan Hazard. We're going to jump to the Challenger Pro League now, and we're going to talk about something, but Joris has just raised his hand, so I feel like he's going to jump in. So I'm going to stop what I was about to say and hand over to Joris very quickly.
I still had a moment of the week.
Of course, sorry.
And
go for it.
Okay, I don't know which one I should pick actually, but it goes back to the game against between Charleroi and Club Brugge for sure. I do think probably there's so many things. You just have to talk about that game a little bit. I do think just because so many things happened. So one thing is the ridiculous Shadler interview after the game where he was completely blaming the referees for everything and then going full putting eggshells on his head as well for the whole club. Unfortunately, to be fair, then we have to come back. Why did he did that? There were some things not. In some things he was right. He's potentially right, at least. In some things he wasn't. Like the ridiculous challenge from Van der Kerkhoff. Yeah, that's something you can't really defend. So that's what it makes this a very ridiculous statement. And this is probably the moment of the game. So maybe I'll put that moment that Ben already mentioned quickly in the beginning. But that ridiculous challenge also got the maximum ban as well for that. Which is still ridiculously low for that kind of challenge, I believe. But that's anyway how it is now in the punishment regulations table things, whatever it all is called. But according to that, he got the maximum punishment, which was 4 games effectively and 1 game, I think, under conditions. That was a ridiculous challenge at 1-0 for Charleroi. Came out of nowhere as well, so that was the main thing as well, the main reason why they probably gave it away in the end. But of course, one thing where they might have a point, Charleroi a little bit, is the penalty for Club Brugge, which at least the way that was conducted was a bit that came to be was a bit weird with the referee initially not giving a penalty, but then on the opinion of the linesman, not the VAR, mind you. That's the whole the whole controversy about it. The linesman overturning that decision, while of course the referee in theory is of course ahead of him in the rule of command, but in the chain of command. But yes, that's that on a challenge which. I mean, it's quite unclear, I guess, and that's where it's the thing is. This would be something that if the referee would not have given it, it might not have been overturned by VAR. The referee now, based on this linesman opinion, gave it. It's one of those ones where that's a kind of a gray area where you would say we don't want them anymore. These kind of penalties. And if they would have let it slide, the VAR most likely would not have come back to it, and indeed would have let it slide. And then the game would have a completely different story, maybe as well. That's one thing. I mean, I'll leave my own opinion out of it. I'm not entirely certain whether it would have been one or should have been one. I'll sit on the fence on the decision itself, but just the way it came to be was a bit strange. And of course, then there is the whole thing again, like we had with the game against Eupen, the first game of the season at that time. I guess it was a few seasons ago where we got a lot of extra time, as of the consequence of wasting a lot of time, which in this specific case definitely was the case as well. So Kone did waste too much time, and it is. I get the comments that it is based on that it's deserved for Charleroi for doing that, even though in the position they are in, we're in as well. It was maybe logical, but like the game basically ended with a lot of extra time, plus at some of the extra time, then well, there's that famous thing, of course, until they score the meme with Ferguson originally, of course, Manchester United under Ferguson, which now kind of came to be here, and the whole thing is not necessarily that it was deserved, but I do feel it's still more. The main frustration for non-Club Brugge fans is it seems to only happen with Club Brugge. Like, it is rightfully that it's happened, but it does just seem to be. I'm not saying it is the case, but it does seem to be that they saw, if these things happen, they are often the side that can profit of it and finally score that goal that they needed as well. Until that they get these extra minutes that other sides feel like they don't get, whether that's rightfully or not. I'll leave that in the middle, but that's just a feeling. I guess the general feeling I'm getting. Like, if they get it here, why? Every fan has examples of other games where there was a lot of time wastings where they did not do that and just blew the whistle exactly on the dot of the extra time added on. So there are a lot of discussion points around that game. I just want to raise the discussion points. I'm not necessarily saying we should go deeper in it, but yeah, I am also personally not so clear on what I want to say about this, but just that this might be worth mentioning nonetheless. That this is, also another thing that also happens. The fact checking, that's also something that only happened after the game. For these things, only happened with the games against Eupen a few seasons ago, and this one as well about these things. And it's a bit strange, like how defensive. Well, this whole discussion is maybe a bit strange, but it is. Yeah, it's something that lives under the fans of other sides, and in Belgium, I guess that's maybe something. But that's what I'm trying to convey here. Whether that's justified or not, yeah, who knows?
It's not quite. It's like the old Fergie time, isn't it? Like when he used to be like there with his watch, like pointing at his watch and chewing his gum and kind of doing all that stuff. But I'm always of the opinion as well with this sort of stuff. Like, it's so like it's the time that's added on and like how much it's actually paid is so subjective, and there's so many times where like some teams do get away with play acting and some teams don't, and it's not just club. Like, I'm not pointing a finger at club at all, because it's like I've seen it. Like when I go watch Reading, if something happens and it's like, how have you not added on the moment where that guy just like walked to pick the ball up for the throw in, or like it's like you've added 3 minutes and this guy's gone down for like a minute, but you've just blown the whistle anyway. But then it's also like, as a professional footballer, you just play on until the whistle goes for full time. Like, if Ordonez doesn't score, we're not talking about it. Do you know what I mean? It just gets forgotten. So it's kind of like, it only probably comes up as much because maybe club are just really good at scoring in those moments, and then it's like you notice it. But like, I don't know, we could have been playing forever in the Circular Dender game and no one probably would have scored. So it's like you could have added 20 minutes for one of those teams to score. So it's just like, it's what it is. You're taught as a kid, you just play to the whistle. Like, you just got to keep going and stuff like that. And you got to keep defending. You got to keep doing it. Like, the only thing I think you can complain if you're like, there's a foul in the build-up that was missed or something like that, or like an offside or something like that. That's your legitimate complaint, but that's nothing to do with the timing factor. So I'm always of the opinion that it's annoying, it's frustrating, but it just happens, and I don't think you can do anything about it unless you just stop. That the referee stopped his watch, and it was like an automatic thing, like in rugby where they have where the watch just stops. It gets to like 90 minutes, and the next time it goes out of play, that's it. The game's over. But you'd have to be really, really on it, because obviously the difference between rugby and football is there's a lot more play acting and time wasting in football, and I mean, there's so many ways I'd speed up the game and stop that, and it's like you use multi-ball, like, and the throw-ins have to be taken so much quicker. Throw-ins are the most boring thing in the world. They take forever. Like, they're just too slow and that sort of thing. The same, like, you could have like a timer for set pieces. You could have a timer for goal kicks, like properly implemented and stuff like that. And you could experiment with all this in playoff too, because it's going to be completely irrelevant, or even the relegation playoffs, because I was just thinking a bit earlier when we were talking about it. I don't think we're probably going to talk about the relegation playoffs when they start, as soon as it's basically decided, because there's probably going to be nothing to talk about because it's completely pointless football at this point. It's just going through the motions and stuff like that. My kind of opinion was that I think Charleroi do have some legitimate grievances about maybe some of the things, like was there a foul on Fluke and all that sort of stuff, but they should have played to the whistle. And I think it's more frustration that they've just not been good enough the last couple of weeks. They lost some big games. They've lost ground on the top six when they really should have been in with a shout because they've lost games that they shouldn't have lost. So, yeah, if club are going to take advantage of the referee playing on, then fine. Like Ordonez could have hit that into Rosed. He's a centre back for like Pete's sake. Like he's not meant to score from there. It's not like it's Van Aken taking that shot. Do you know what I mean? It's just like that. It's a good finish. But if he puts it into Rosed, we literally aren't talking about this. That's how I feel about it. I get it though, because I'm obviously neutral. I'm not like a fan of one of the clubs that probably sees us all the time. And back in the day, if you'd asked me during the 2000s what I thought about Man United always getting extra time to score goals, I'd be like, oh, it's corruption. Plain and simple. It's Fergie time. It's just wrong. It's the Old Trafford kind of used to get the Old Trafford bounce where you like the ball would be 200 meters over the line, but they wouldn't give the goal and stuff like that. So yeah, I understand. I do understand where fans are coming from, but from what I can see from this, that's kind of how I feel. Scott, I don't know if you've got anything you want to add before we go to the CPL.
Yeah, I was just thinking when you were talking about that, actually, that you see that, and I think fans in almost any league in Europe would tell you that there's at least one, and sometimes in some leagues, two sides who get the perceived rub of the green when it comes to added time on and decisions.
Looking at you, Spain and Scotland.
Are we talking about Livingston and Kilmarnock in Scotland? Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is
Kilmarnock. They always get the rub of the green.
Yeah,
not the teams in Glasgow.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you see that in almost any league. It's not just the top five leagues where there's always at least one side, and in most leagues, at least two, where the perception is by fans of clubs of every other side other than those two that there's something going on. Nobody's ever really able to pull out the data to prove something either way, though. That's what I always find interesting. So sometimes I think people just read their own theories in based on their own side and how that affects their kind of narratives. Ben's point actually about there being a whole range of things that we could do actually to speed up the game are really, really interesting, and we may see some of that at some point. Normally, of course, it's major competitions where FIFA decide to come along and start arsing about with things like this, which is fine, but don't do it at major tournaments. Find an environment that is a little bit more safer and smarter than a major tournament that only happens once every 4 years. But it's an interesting talking point, that one.
Absolutely. I keep forgetting we've got a World Cup this year. I'm joking, of course. I don't forget there's got a World Cup this year. It's all that anyone is talking about, boycotts and who's actually going to turn up. I mean, Belgium is completely wide open now at the moment, isn't it, to see who's going to appear there. We can talk about that when and if anything does get announced. Obviously a very, very tricky situation, and I think football's kind of the last thing on anyone's mind in that sort of situation at the moment. So yeah, we'll see what happens there, but we can look ahead, hopefully look forward to the World Cup at some point over the next few months. But one side that can't really be looking forward to anything, let alone months, probably weeks, is Molenbeek. Scott, it's been another terrible week for the club, and it's looking pretty dire. I think there was a report, was it Dave van der Broek maybe, in Het Nieuwsblad wrote a piece on them today, just basically being like how much of a mess it is and how much of a disaster it is. And it feels like this, I don't want to say it could be the end or anything like that, but it looks like them getting a license is pretty much impossible within the next 13 days. But I'll let you talk us through kind of the results of stuff, and then we can speak a little bit about Molenbeek and maybe a little bit about another one or two clubs that could find themselves in that situation given their finances. And there's a very funny comment on social media about one of those clubs and one of their former sporting directors getting a job at Leicester City. So if there's any Leicester City fans listening, you can really look forward to the time you're going to have under your new sporting director if it's anything like his experience in Belgium.
Yeah, it's been a pretty mad week in the Challenger Pro League for news, and of course, Lierse have just appointed a new sporting director as well, and that's got an interesting appointment. We'll touch on that too. But we've reached match day 27 now in the Challenger Pro League, much of which we already know the outcomes of in terms of the bigger picture. But Kortrijk beat RFC Liège 3-1. Young Ghent won 2-1 against Patro, who've lost a lot of ground actually in recent weeks. Beveren winning again, so they're still on course to go undefeated, which is what everyone's keeping an eye on now. Young Genk lost 3-2 to Lierse. Club Next lost 5-0 to Anderlecht Futures. In a game that probably more people should be talking about, but won't be because of the division it's in. Frank Moran lost 2-0 to Beerschot. Molenbeek, who we'll touch on in a second, managed to get a draw against Eupen, 2 each. And Lommel, who Ben just touched on, lost 1-0 at home, surprisingly, to a 10-man Serang, which is a right miserable result, whichever way you spin it. Ben talking about James McCarran, Lommel's former sporting director, cropping up as the new sporting director at Leicester. Leicester fans desperate for information on what James Carran's like. And I think the short answer to that is he had a pretty miserable time at Lommel, to be honest, for reasons that weren't entirely down to him, of course. You know, these things always have to be nuanced a little bit. But on the whole, I think it'd be fair to say that his recruitment during his time at Lommel was not good. And I don't think his contribution to sort of where Lommel are and where they've been was particularly positive across the whole. I think his relationship with the City Football Group, obviously, which Lommel are part of, is almost certainly a huge factor in him being appointed at Leicester. That carries a lot of weight. And of course, if you're looking at this to analyse it properly, any role within the City Football Group network means those individuals are going to have access to a massive network, both of their own individual contacts, but other people within the City Group network. So that's probably maybe the real driving force behind why they felt this was a good appointment. But if you judge James McCarran on what he did at Lommel, his most recent job, then, you know, there is, as Sven Klaas alluded to today, Ben will tell us more about what Sven said in a second. You would think, what on earth is any of this actually about? And of course, Lierse, as I mentioned, they've appointed a new sporting director. Former club legend Yves Cernels is back at Lisp. Spent 14 years, of course, as the head coach with the Red Flames, was part of that championship winning side, that whole setup in 1997 as well. So that's really quite an interesting appointment, him coming back into club football. I wonder whether he expected that to happen, whether he ever thought that would happen. Interesting as well, I think, that because we know that Lierse are a particularly local club. Lots of Belgian clubs are, of course, have very strong local connections, but it feels like a very local appointment to a very local club as well, and that's kind of what I quite like about this. That's my initial feeling about that one. So it'll be interesting to see how he does there, coming into an environment obviously that he knows very well. So to some extent, he's kind of coming home. The other big bit of news, of course, being Molenbeek being deducted 3 points. Failure to prove that they paid certain debts, parts of certain transfers, unable to provide clear paperwork. You know, the rules are the rules. If you can't do it and you don't do it, you know, within the timescales, this is what happens. But it does feel, as Ben was saying, that Molenbeek are now on this real slide to wherever that's going to be. Texter is mired in all sorts of trouble. You know, the club's owner, how in charge he is across Molenbeek now is debatable as well. You know, lots of sources reporting that effectively he's no longer, you know, the chief operating officer in any sense within his own footballing network as well. And of course, he was slapped with a 90 million bill to pay, which as of today he does have to pay. So that's going to get marred in months and months of ongoing legal battles. And Molenbeek fans just want to be free, I suppose, of this. They just want somebody else, ideally, to come in and run their football club on a competent level, and that's what they're crying out for. Because until the Texter situation is resolved, then they're never going to be really clear of drama like this. But yeah, it feels like a lot of news coming at the CPL this week, and as Ben was saying, a lot of it not really positive, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, it's nice we got the Lierse thing in there, like you mentioned, like with kind of the connection to the local. Because for me, that's just like we're never going to probably get back to that, and that's what has always been for me the beauty of football clubs, is that connection to the local. And that Molenbeek would love to have someone that was local come in and take over, but the football's just too expensive. You just can't afford that anymore, unfortunately. And that's what's so sad, I guess, about the situation that's going on there.
The problem also is deeper than those 3 points they will get. Well, that are deducted now effectively, but in 2 weeks' time, I think already we might know if the future is still, if that club actually in this current form will exist again. So like we might have another bankruptcy case if they don't fulfill other financial deadlines. At least they didn't reach these deadlines, and it is looking bleak that they would be able to do that. So I'm not sure. I don't think I would invest myself in it at the moment, because it's true. It's just even if I had the money, if I would have the capabilities, which sadly I don't. But okay, even if I would have, I would think
maybe if the three of us club together, we could pull enough together to, make an interesting acquisition. We could become our own multi-club network and start with a club in Belgium, as lots of other people have tried to do. We might be able to do it with more integrity and certainly more knowledge than some of the clowns we've seen come along. That's for sure.
I was going to say, Scott, as with your coin consultancy, maybe you can go down the Fabrizio Romano route and just shill yourself out to any country that's willing to pay you loads of money. I don't know if you guys saw his post about the Saudi Arabian Humanitarian Fund today. The bloke just put out some random 2-minute video about how amazing the Saudi Arabian Humanitarian Fund is, and I was just like, what an absolute...
Yeah.
I won't say it, but like, the less said about that man, the better. He is a problem with so many things. I can't stand him. But we'll do that. We'll make a load of money out of just being shills for any slightly dodgy regime. We'll take all your money and we'll invest it into Molenbeek. That'll go down well.
Ironically, you just gave him a mention, of course.
Yeah, that'll boost his sales. You can blur him out. You can bleep him out. But it's like what you always said, that I think they need to find a certain amount of money or they need to find someone to give, like, who's going to guarantee the money within kind of like by the 16th of March, which I think in the piece I was reporting said impossible. It's just not going to happen. And for the piece I read as well, Lyon have pulled the funding from the club as well. Like, Lyon aren't kind of involved, and that was one of the issues anyways, with all about that Nuama signing, and it was all a bit weird and a bit dodgy anyway, and it just shouldn't have been allowed to happen the way it happened. So that was all a bit strange. And I just see that Lyon putting out, and I just think of like Metz putting out a Salang, and how I don't know how they're still around and fun and surviving. Like, that's a really interesting test case. And you mentioned Lommel there, Scott, and I just completely forgot the reporter's name.
Sven Klaas,
sorry. Yeah. Completely forgot Sven's name there. I was literally just reading.
Sorry, Sven. We should say sorry. Sven does listen to us. We know this because he interacts with us from time to time. Yeah.
I found his comment about the thing, and I was like, yeah, Sven said that. So apologies for that. But yeah, no, Sven obviously mentioned how much debt they've been left in. It's like, well, if the City Group just decided to lose interest in Lommel, like, what's going to happen there?
Yeah, exactly. And then, totally unsustainable without that. Yeah,
exactly. And then I was looking at Cercle Bruges, and I was like, if they actually got relegated, like, what would a Monaco that invested? Like, because for all the signs I've seen, they're very much invested, and it feels like it doesn't feel as short-termism as what Salang and Metz was. Like, Salang should never really been promoted. They just got an incredibly good batch of Metz loanees, like Mikatadze, Maziz, and those guys. They got them up, and then it was suddenly like, oh my god, like, what are we actually going to do? Molenbeek Text obviously like bumped them into the Pro League, and then it was clear they had absolutely no plan on how they're going to stay there. Signed loads of players, it was terrible. Sacked and hired some terrible people as managers, and it was just a complete disaster class car crash thing. So yeah, if you're a Cercle fan, I feel like you're always probably a little bit worried about Monaco leaving. I feel like it's just one of those things, isn't it? But I think when I compare them to the other ones, I feel like it feels a little bit more concrete in terms of you've got people in there who actually care about Cercle rather than just kind of seeing it as an extension. And I don't know, I don't really know the in and out of the City group and how it operates and stuff. And obviously we knew a few people that were there at the beginning at Lommel, and they did care about the club. They wanted to be in that community feel back. Mike, obviously, who we spoke to a couple of times and we met, he obviously went to all the games. He was very much based out there. So I don't know what it's like at the moment without him, but that's definitely one to watch because the CPL, I think Alex spoke to us about it years ago, and Antoine's obviously spoken to us about it. Like, it's just, it burns your money. Like, it really does burn your money if you're trying to get into the Pro League. So yeah, that's why I got a lot of time for teams like Lierse. And when we went there, it just felt like a real community club. It felt like going back in time to before I was born, going into that stadium. Like, when you're just like, this stadium's seen things, like, seen a lot of good, a lot of bad, but it had like an atmosphere and a feel. And I think that did help that it was like the most ridiculous weather we've ever seen as well. Like, I'll never forget that day of just being like, this is not European weather. Like, this is something I expected, like a tropical country. So that was quite incredible. But yeah, if you're around that area and I think for ground hoppers, like if you're that sort of ground hopper, love your kind of football and stuff, you've probably got to go to that stadium because it's the sort of stadium that ground hoppers seem to absolutely love. Like, from what I've seen, ground hoppers, they're not really into the modern stadium. It's all about those retro old school feels, and Belgium's got a couple of them. Obviously, Jan Bridal, but the S is definitely one of them that you could definitely visit. So
There was also, while we're still on Lierse, there was a rather nice reception at the town hall over the last few days as well to celebrate the club's anniversary, which is rather nice. The town hall had Lierse flags and banners flying from the front windows, which looked really, really nice as well. But Lisp is actually a really nice. I was going to call it a little ground, and not in a disparaging way at all, but it's actually quite a nice stadium for lots of reasons. It does have a sense of atmosphere about it. So Ben's point about being a good location for groundhoppers is a good one. And when we were there, which was a while ago now, but when we were there, they were trying to set up they just set up a new fan zone immediately beside the ultras area as well, which has grown since then, which was quite a nice idea as well. So it's definitely quite a nice place to get to if you can.
They also I had more food provided for me there than I did when I went to the incredible Prince Moulay Abdallah Stadium in Rabat, which is one of the most modern stadiums in the world. So they feed you there. If you do the little VIP thing as well, you can have a nice little glass of champagne and sit with all the kind of locals before the game. It's a great experience.
We should remind everybody as well, because people won't remember this, but when we visited as well, they gave us scarves. Which no other club that we visited have done that yet. So that's a really nice local gesture and a really good example, I think, of a club who, when people who come and show an interest in you from outside, just welcome you like that. I think that's a great thing, and I think that said a lot about the club as well. So we've given Lierse as a club and as a town a perfect advert this week, and that wasn't our intention, but it's all true, folks.
I know I said we'll shill ourselves out for any dodgy regime, but now we'll promote your Belgian town tourism. Like, if you're a Belgian town and you want some tourists, just get in touch. We'll wax lyrical about you. So yeah, hopefully everyone's off to the S this weekend. I don't know if they're even playing at home, to be honest, but off you go. It's a great place, a great stadium. Joris has family. I don't know, Joris, if your family members still lives there. And they were last time. No, given up on it. After we turned up, we ruined it, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, I think that probably just about does it for this weekend's Belgian Football Podcast / the S special / everything in the Challenger Pro League is depressing episode. Guys, anything else to add before we head off?
They do, in fact, play at home this weekend, so that I can add. Against Club Next, though, so still not maybe the most exciting fixture, but still, it would be a good chance. Yeah, for sure.
Perfect. That just about does it then for this week. All the usual stuff now. Rate us if you haven't rated us yet. Buy us a coffee if you haven't bought us a coffee yet. All those sort of things. Read Scott's Substack if you haven't read his Substack yet. Subscribe to his Substack if you haven't subscribed to it yet. All the usual stuff. And yeah, thanks as always for listening. And we'll be back once again with another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast this time next week.